I'll start with Natalie. Natalie, Clark told us about the Bunnings experience. Can you share from your example at Flex Careers how you have seen flexible working used to attract, engage and retain older workforces?
Sure. Can you hear me? Yep, great. So flexible working, we've worked, when I was with Flex Careers, with a couple of hundred companies and organisations, government, not-for-profit and corporate alike. And where we were embedding and normalising flexibility, we recognise that I don't like using it as a silver bullet, but it really does address a lot of challenges that organisations face, particularly around, from a generational perspective. Looking at the older workforce, a number of organisations recognised how important it was to the conversation around attraction, but also retention. And flexibility just was an absolute natural fit in that space. So the important thing to note about flexible working is that it was about making working a very human experience, about recognising the individual in front of you, what their needs are, and also addressing the fact that they still needed to meet their work responsibilities, but how do you do that in a very different way? And so we saw that, for example, at CBA, we did a big project there addressing that particular thing exactly where, look, you're going to hear a lot of the same things over and over about job sharing and also a number of other techniques of flexible working being utilised because it actually does work. But there was a very strong need for a very big paradigm shift. That paradigm shift, particularly in, I would say, in the corporate space, but it exists elsewhere, is that flexibility is just for working mums or part-time. And that's a myth that I think everybody in this room knows. But in the broader world, that's still the paradigm, particularly that it's a very female thing. It's acceptable for working mums to have flexibility, but if you're a man, it's not really acceptable when we know that's not the case. So it's about, a lot of the work we did was breaking down those barriers of what flexible working is and isn't, and how to actually do it in a way that has a lot of meaning, and as a result is really profitable and adds a lot of productivity to the organisation.
Thank you. I'll open up the opportunity. Does anybody here, would anyone here like to ask a question about Bunnings or Property New South Wales before I jump in again? Tanya.
Hi, I'm Tanya Smythe from Family and Community Services. We have a significant proportion of older people that work in our teams, but I'm interested in actually employing older people when they're older, as opposed to, you know, I've been with Fax over 20 years and I'll probably be there in another 20. People coming in when they're younger and continuing to work there, which is a different thing, I suppose, and I don't know how well in the public service we actually recruit older people once they are already older people.
Who wants to catch that one?
From a Bunnings point of view, we do certainly have a process that we follow. Our recruitment process is pretty straightforward. We look for talent, and we also we don't normally have that much difficulty in finding it. We have people coming to our stores every single day, so it might be a little bit different for us than it is for other areas. But the one thing that we do is that we encourage our recruitment teams to think outside the square, to be involved in different expos. I went to a recent migrant, I'm not even sure where, an expo where we were talking specifically with people with English as their second language. We're also looking at you know, even with our recruitment teams going out to whether it be universities or schools or whatever. I don't think we've actually physically had to go out and try to source the older worker because they just come to us, which is helpful. Now, I'm assuming eventually older people will end up at your facilities as well too. So, yeah.
So just to add to that, so the reason why you're getting so many people is because you're very flexible, and people know that in the workplace. So organisations that employ flexible working as a way of being, not as a benefit. It's not seen as a reward, it's actually just how you work, is something that will attract a diverse group of people. There's tons of research out there that shows that. So there are two key demographic groups that it particularly helps to lower the barrier to entry into the workforce. One is women. There are around 3.3 million women in Australia that are currently underemployed, not unemployed, that includes that statistic, but underemployed, which means there are women who've gone and had children and then haven't returned to the workforce because of a lack of flexible working, or if they have returned to the workforce, they may have been in a much more senior role, but because of the lack of flexible work, they weren't able to go back to that role, or because they're the primary carer, and so they need to have more flexibility and so on and so forth. And the same for older workers in regards to not necessarily returning to work, but needing more flexibility or looking for an employer that recognises and embraces diversity. So if you want to attract and retain a broader and diverse group of people, I strongly suggest that flexible working is not just embraced internally, but you yell it from the rooftops, because then people will come to you, because there's not that many organisations that do it well yet. So I promise you, if you want the people, they will come.
I was just going to say, from a recruitment process, we recognise that there is conscious and unconscious bias. So where we can as an organisation look at how we remove elements on there. So why is age on the application form? Why is gender? Why is a whole range of issues on there? Because really what I want to know is, can the person do the job or not? And if we take away some of those things which can lead to unconscious bias, we can actually start to change things.
So Stace, we have a lot of the government, a lot of head offices, particularly the departments, are moving in the next few years. What's your advice to them around building inclusive, proactively building inclusive workplaces, not just those that comply, but ones that are generally great places to work for people, no matter what age, no matter what ability?
So it's, from our point of view, so we're looking at all of the delivery of the design of the new government office hubs. I've been looking at this for the last 3 years, and the journey just in the last 12 months of how design has changed now from a base design that we look at for a modern office building to looking at what we can do. So if I go back 2 years ago, the first fit outs that we were looking at, they were based on basic DDA requirements. So it was code compliance and looking at providing a modern workplace for government. Whereas now there is an overlay that there is actually a requirement when we go out and procure architects where they need to look at this from a more inclusive point of view. So we do the design for dignity overview. But what we've found is in the last couple of designs that we've done is that even the architects we engage have developed and are coming on the journey with us. So whilst we had to have greater impost 12 months ago in the design that we were looking at, now it's almost become the norm, which is, I think, a great thing, not just for government, but for all workplaces going forward. For us, what we look at, we just look for good design, and that good design means it needs to be inclusive for everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else want to turn? Arthur.
Thanks, Siobhan. My name's Arthur Chang. I work for New South Wales Health, and thank you so much for all your contributions and the invigorating discussion so far. As you may know, the New South Wales public sector is moving towards flexible working on an if not, why not basis. And some of the managers that I've been working with are quite fearful about the loss of control. One manager paraphrased in their mind, if not, why not, to me as, well, Arthur, is a negotiation where I have the final call. And I'm not quite sure whether that is the spirit of if not, why not. How would you suggest we go about working with managers who may be used to a more traditional way of management and have been doing so for, say, the past 3 decades, and to get them on board about what if not, why not is truly about, and be comfortable about this flipped idea where we are empowering employees to work flexibly?
So that's a very common reaction. When I did some work with Bupa, they released it wasn't really policy, it was more of a guideline, and one of the subheadings is what to do when all hell breaks loose around flexibility. And then it goes on to saying, of course, it's not going to happen and you know it's going to be fine, but and so on and so forth. But there is a real fear. And I don't think we should sweep it aside and poo-poo it and go, oh, well, it's not important, they're just a naysayer or a change blocker or whatever title we give them. It is a real fear, and it's recognising that, you know, leadership and management has been done in the command and control for way more than 30 years, but yeah, for probably longer, probably close to 100, maybe even longer with the Industrial Revolution. That's really when it all started. But the way that you can overcome it is by looking at it from a different perspective and encouraging your managers to do so, which is that flexibility is not just what the employee would like. It's about a negotiation between the employee and the manager. The employee still has responsibilities to achieve, KPIs, SLAs, whatever you want to call them. They still need to do their job, but what we're discussing is about changing the way that they do their job. And it still needs to meet the needs of the organisation, customers, their own needs. So you were talking about the receptionist before. Great example, maybe they can job share, but that's a different type of flexibility. They can't do remote working. When I flew from Melbourne this morning, you know, I was hoping that, you know, the pilot's not having a, you know, remote day. Like, they physically have to be present. But they can choose their shift. They can choose which route they take. They can choose. So flexibility is not always work from home. That's the other myth. It's about looking at all the key stakeholders, and if an individual would like to have a certain type of flexibility, it's not just a given that they get it. The manager needs to be empowered to understand what are all the different types of flexible working options, understanding what the motivation is of the employee. So it's not about questioning or judging, it's about meeting a workable outcome. So for example, if it's about childcare or looking after an ageing parent, or if it's about that they want to get to the gym at different times of the day, or they're a volunteer, what doesn't matter, but the point is, how can we help make that happen whilst they still meet the responsibilities of work? And creating a framework of effective communication. How do I contact you? What are the modes of communication, so that the manager can still feel that there's an open line of communication between themselves and the employee. And the important thing is also to trial that type of flexible working. How does it work? Is it good? Great. If it doesn't work, how do we tweak this? How do we change it? What needs to be amended? So it's not black or white, it's an evolution of testing and trialling and making it happen.
Can I add to that? So you've hit it right on the head. Leadership is number one, because you know, we've done this several times now, and to have supportive, good leadership makes a project and a transition work so much smoothly. But the reality is that you're right. You know, you might have one executive director or one DepSec that is not supportive. And we've had that scenario. I guess what we did is that, first of all, you ask them the question, do you trust your staff? Imagine if they said no to that. But the other important thing that we do is, and we've done a lot of this, is that because we have actually implemented this several times, including within our own organisation, we run panels where we do Q&As like this, but with someone that's on that change journey or that transition journey, and provide the examples. So we had exactly the same questions. I had the same questions. How do I know where my staff are? How do I know where they are in a building when you've got the ability to work anywhere? Well, it comes down to trust and going from command and control to task-based and having the faith in your team.
I was just going to build on that and say, at times it's called failure to implement. And in that sense that we will come up with those, yes, it's going to be flexible, and we might have senior leadership on board, as I've seen in some organisations, but then it hasn't developed the culture that I see that Bunnings has. Now, that's part of the culture. So, yes, having the Q&As, having the town halls, having a whole range of things so that you can make sure that the consistent messaging gets out there, but it's also how you build the culture. Unless you do that part as well, you're still going to have the white-handing, and that's what you need to be able to do, is get the message out there clearly for everybody to hear.
Greg, building on that.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, if I could, what Bunnings does, we do have similar things as well. I'm not to say it's utopia. It certainly is. We do have our challenges in that way as well. But what we do is we do have regular catch up with leaders, not just from an operational point of view, but from a HR point of view, from different business areas as well. And twice a year, minimum of twice a year, with all of our leaders, we have what we call people planning. And that people planning is not just a session where we talk about who's next for your job. People planning is a session where we speak about what's the strengths, what are the things that we can utilise from our leadership, what are the things that we're regularly seeing from our team members. Are we getting things back that are saying, you know what, you say you've got this culture but you haven't? We've got a values program where team members can anonymously, or they can say who they are if they want, and let us know what the issues are in their store. And we take it seriously, and we investigate all of them, and we go through and we make the corrections where they need to be. Our general manager, our whole board are on board with regularly posting video snaps on our workplace, which is a Facebook-run system. And they will provide stuff about respectful workplace, inclusiveness, diversity, everything. They'll talk about not just the operational stuff, but they'll also talk about the things that people want to know about, not just about the business, although it's good to know that we're making money, but from a point of view of the key resource that we have, and that's our people, is what we focus on a regular basis to talk to them. So you can have success through it. You can have success by making sure that you're capturing and measuring what's happening out there in the workplace and identifying those managers and giving them some guidance along the way and show them the benefit of it. We do that quite well, I think. Not all the time that we have success, but generally most of the time we have success with it.
Greg, one of the most common things we hear, not just with flexibility but also with disability, is that people are afraid to ask. And managers in particular say to us they're afraid to initiate the conversation with the employee because they're afraid they'll make a mess of it. They'll say something insensitive. What's your advice for those managers?
Is always ask, because see the person first. You never see the disability, right? Or what is that stereotypical issue? See the person. As I talk about myself, I am a father, a grandfather, I'm an author, I'm a writer, I'm a chocolate eater, as you can tell. There's a lot of things about me. Oh yes, and by the way, yes, I have a visual impairment. But it's part of me, it's not all of me. See the person first, talk to the person, ask them, and go, what are your needs? Just like you would with work there, which what Clark was talking about, but the same things. Are there any particular things we need to deal with? So if I look at Microsoft as an example, from a workplace adjustment, they'll go, what do you need to do your job to the best of your ability? That's the question they ask everybody from a workplace adjustment. And that's a really great way to do it. But yeah, just ask, because most of us go, thank you for asking.
Anybody else want to turn on the floor? Yes? You missed out before I cut you off, so definitely you get a turn.
In talking... Okay, how's that? Thank you. In talking about flexibility, etc., we've been speaking a lot about managers and then the person who is asking about flexibility. It's an unfortunate thing, but my experience over quite a few years is that sometimes the most resistant people to flexibility are team members. So fellow team, people in your team, who may not be able to, for whatever reason, access or do flexibility, and sometimes bringing them along the journey is a little bit difficult. So I'm just wondering if you have any hints about actually getting teams to support each other, to not have undue expectations, etc.
Yeah, look, from a team member point of view, we actually don't have too much trouble with the vocalising of their or the verbalising of their request for flexibility. We've got it built in our system as well, where we we actually will touch base with all of our team members. Every single team member in our business has an appraisal on a regular basis. So it's twice a year they have an appraisal, and in that appraisal it actually talks about whether or not they have got any other underlying things that they do. We talk about whether they have any sport, carers responsibilities, anything like that gets covered off too. And the other big part that we had, which has recently undergone some significant changes. I don't know whether you probably don't follow it too closely, but our EBA negotiations we've just sort of launched into, and we're about to put them forward. We used to have what we call a bank of hours in our system at Bunnings, and that bank of hours system was to enable our team to get the same pay every single week, but bank. It really worked well for my daughter. My daughter is a uni student and she's working part-time in Bunnings, and that particular system worked well for her because there was a fair bit of study that she needed to do, a few exams that she had to do, some uni days which weren't that regular. They're not as regular as what they were when I was in uni many years ago, but anyway, that happens. From that, we were able to bank it, and she worked them back later on when she had more time to do it. And that was available to all of our team members on that system. We have some who didn't want to change. They just want to do their normal hours and that's it, and that's fine. But enabling them through having a system in place, because if you don't have the system in place to allow it to happen, people will just fall through the cracks and they'll just think that they're not allowed to talk up. But it's there. It's in the system. It's in our the bank of hours still exists, but it's instead of a 12-month period, it's now only a 1-month period. So it's still there, and it's just what our team members wanted. So if you can have it in your system, and I think Susan, you mentioned about having something in your system that allows it to happen is the most important part for people to be able to see, read, understand, and comprehend. And the consultation part as well with the team. What do you want to do? And those discussions are important.
The other component of this is, so I was answering Arthur's question before about the management and how you overcome, and I talked about taking in the stakeholders of who are affected by that individual's request. So one of those stakeholders is the team. So team-based flexible working, and what I mean by that is not that everybody needs to work flexibly. The point here is that everyone has the option to work flexibly. Not everyone will want to work flexibly. Some people actually like structured hours and doing the Monday to Friday, and that's what they want. Other people would like compressed work weeks. Some people would like to have the ability to work from home. Other people would like to shift down to part-time, shift up to full-time, and so on and so on and so forth. So there's so many different ways to work flexibly. I know at least 25, and it's growing rapidly because of technology and creativity. So in a team-based environment, it's about the openness and the transparency of how are people working, how do we connect in with each other, how do we collaborate, how do we work. So it's important that team members all acknowledge that not everyone is equal, and it's not even the right word, but that's what they will think. In regards to accessing flexibility. So a receptionist who needs to be physically present can't work from home, but it doesn't mean they can't work flexibly. It's about looking what their role and the type of flexibility would be relevant to them. So talking to other team members who might be getting disgruntled, saying, well, is it that you would like flexibility? And looking at their role and what type of flexibility they would be able to have. Now, you will always have those who might want to work from home and they can't. So then the conversation is, are you in the right role? Because you can't put a square peg in a round hole. You need to address the whole person in front of you and going, okay, well, if your needs have changed and you still want to be working here, what other role in the organisation could you possibly do with the skill set that you have? So it's not a black and white thing again, but it's about recognising that there is a whole team approach, not just an individual approach for flexibility to work well.
So glad you mentioned that. That's a lovely segue for the team-based pilot that we're doing across the public sector. So we are doing that at scale, and it's fantastic to see so many of the agencies participating in that here. And we've got time for maybe 2 more questions, so I'll open it up to, yeah.
I'm just interested in how customers respond to having older people in the workforce, especially in the Bunnings example, I would expect that people would appreciate that level of experience.
Well, look, that's an excellent question, because that's something that we've been talking about an awful lot. And what we find, we've done a bit of a study on it actually to see who responds most to, and who customers go looking for as well. And we know it depends on what they're looking for. If they're going there to look at something that's new, U-Butte, maybe digital, maybe something where technology is really high in demand, they might seek out the younger team member. But the absolute majority of our customers will aim straight towards the older person. They will. They just do it. They try to find that bit of experience, because they're able to say, yeah, you want to put that noggin in that? Yeah, that's cool. What you do is you use and it just comes out. And by the way, the other thing is that the experience that we have, I mentioned before, the 56 plus in the workforce is 20% of our workforce. Of that 56 plus age group and the age group below it, the 46 through to 55, it's 55% of those are female. So we do have the majority of our older workers being in the female area as well. So it's not as if I'm just saying that all the tradespeople, because we've got a lot of tradies who are women. We've got a lot of horticulturists and people who are interested in the nursery area, landscape, et cetera. So we're very, very fortunate there. But to answer that question, most people make a beeline to the older person. I often get stopped when I'm walking through one of the stores, because everybody, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're the CEO or whatever, you wear the red shirt and the apron and everything. You wear the same as what everybody does. So when I go into a store, I wear the red shirt, the apron, the badges, everything else. So I can't tell you how many times somebody's asking me from HR, a question about plumbing or about landscape, or about what plant's the best one to get. Yes, let me find somebody who will actually know what they're talking about. So, but it's good, and we can have that sort of environment. But yeah, they go for the older team member.
Hi there. Is it working? So just a quick question relating to that multi-generation workforce, because that's certainly something we're experiencing at TAFE, and I think it leads to conflict situations and lack of understanding. We're obviously looking at the standard inclusive leadership, unconscious bias training, but what else can we be doing to create more collaboration and understanding amongst those multi-generation workforce?
Yes, because I did raise it earlier, it is the thing that's troubling us the most at the moment. It's difficult to manage, and we're probably trying to find the same answers that you're trying to find at the moment. The good part is that we do recruit and we do retain a lot of team members. We do recruit based on the community in which they serve. So from our point of view, the recruitment of our team mirroring that of the community is a positive way of doing it. I'm not sure whether that's something that can be done by all businesses, but it's certainly something that we desperately do, because it just makes sense for us to do it that way. But what we're finding is we're finding more and more difficulty in trying to manage this situation between the multi-generations. We spoke about those older workers who might have, because it works both ways. We've got younger workers we've got our youngest leader, our youngest store manager in New South Wales is 23 years old. He is a very, very, very good manager, but he struggles with trying to manage and get the respect of older workers, the same as older workers struggle to get the respect of older managers struggle to get the respect of younger workers as well. So it's difficult, and we're finding the same sort of scenarios that are happening now. All we can continue to do is continue to do the things that we're doing, the people planning, the inclusive leadership training, we run regular sessions of coaching and mentoring. I get out to every single store in a 12-month period where I can, and I just do one-on-one mentoring, and my whole team does it as well. We get out there into being a lot more proactive, because they find it better when there's somebody there from human resources who who pretty much know this stuff and can help them and give them the guidance. That's all we can do, being doing the coaching, the mentoring in the moment, providing them with some regular support, some guidance, some tips on how to manage it. But we're probably struggling the same as you are with the intergenerational leadership. But the other thing that we're finding very difficult is probably one of our biggest implications at the moment is I don't know whether any of you have the same thing, but we're getting a fair bit of interference from I'm not going to call it interference because they're all our customers, but we have a lot of our younger team members who their parents are actually calling on their behalf as well. We're finding it very difficult to try and manage just one person, let alone their whole family at the same time. So that's an implication to us, and my wife is a school teacher. I've told her to fix that for the future, if she wouldn't mind. But that is certainly the biggest implication for us as well, and we're trying to work on some methods to help that as well. The people planning helps, and the mentoring and coaching one-on-one, there's nothing can compare with being able to coach one-on-one.
I'd just like to do a big shout out for another proactive thing for us, and that's procurement. If we look at accessible procurement, Australia did the smart thing, and I remember from willing to work, big shout out for that one, Susan. Looking at accessible procurement, how it will break down barriers for people with disabilities, and particularly people staffing from an ageing perspective. If we buy right, we remove barriers to employment. And so New South Wales has adopted the Australian standard on accessible procurement. It's now part of the state procurement. So if you're looking at SMC 0020, it's really scary that he knows it. But do that. So buy phones that can be used by people whether they've got hearing capabilities or not. Look at our sit-stand desks. We've got a whole range of things that we can do throughout the organisation that brings in the personalisation. I look at accessibility and flexibility and all the things we're doing. It's about personalisation. But if we buy right, we remove the barriers. And I think that's really important for us to do.
Thank you. Anyone else? We can squeeze one last one in. I just don't want to turn off the tap. No? Well, thank you so much to our panel. Susan mentioned before the importance of positive examples. I think we've heard some fantastic positive examples today of what we can do better and how simple and straightforward it is to get better at it. So thank you very much to the panellists. Thank you for your insight and wisdom. Thank you to Susan.